Do you think like a millionaire? Several years ago, I wrote a book called How Rich People Think, this book, and went all over the world, sold lots of copies. And on the back of the book, the question is, do you think like a millionaire? It's a really good question. I've been asked about this in the press all over the world. What does it mean to think like a millionaire? Well, that's really one of the things the book is about. But ask yourself this question. When it comes to getting what you want, whether it's money or it's success or it's the right significant other or partner, how do you go about, once you decide what it is that you want, how do you go about getting it? Millionaires have a very specific tool that they use to get what they want. It's this millionaire thinking I've learned from almost 40 years now of interviews with almost 1,300, I think we're at 1,334 millionaires and billionaires around the world. These are not surveys. These are in-person, one-on-one interviews before the internet, before Zoom. Crazy as it sounds. And there's the tool they use that most people in the masses are never taught to use. It's not really their fault. They were never taught to use it. I was never taught to use it either. And the concept they use among, probably above anything else, is the concept to get what they want. The concept of leverage. Leverage. Right across the property here, I've got a 400-pound statue of Benjamin Franklin. I picked it up. I was giving a speech in Las Vegas like 20 years ago. And of course, I had too much time on my hands, and I'm shopping around the Forum shops in Vegas, walking around as speakers do, because we used to work Vegas all the time. And I bought this crazy statue. It's actually pretty cool, but we've moved it from a couple of homes, and the thing weighs like 400 pounds. I cannot lift that statue. I literally can. I'm not that small, but I can't lift the statue off the ground. So what do? I use leverage. I call someone who's a lot stronger than I am, and stockier, and's got more muscle, and they pick it up. A couple of guys usually have to pick it up to move it from there to the moving truck wherever we've taken it over the last 20 years. That's leverage, okay? That's one leverage in one context, okay? So when it comes to getting what you want, how do you create leverage? Well, I'll tell you the way millionaires do it, because they don't play the linear game. They're not playing the game with money and getting what they want in success, or even a marriage partner or a significant other. They don't play in the linear world like the rest of us are taught to play. Somehow along the way, they learned how to use leverage. So when they want to get what they want, they go and they say, how can I make this easier? How can I use a lever? How can I use leverage just like you leverage a tool to make something easier? Like you use a wrench to turn a nut on a bolt, because it's easier to use the wrench. You're using a form of physical leverage, right? And so how about success? Okay, I'll give you an example. So when I got in the speaking business, 1996, my first year, I lost $50,000 because I was going the linear way. I was literally cold calling on corporations, saying, hi, my name is Steve Siebold, and I teach mental toughness training to some of the biggest athletes in the world and some Olympic athletes and pro sports teams. And I had all this track record. I wasn't making any money, but I had a really good track record, and they were blowing me off. Because that's the linear way to build a business. Get on the phone and start cold calling. That's not what millionaires do. So what did I do? Well, I used a form of leverage. I went to some of the millionaires I was interviewing and I said, I'm trying to build this speaking business. I have this content with mental toughness. It's great stuff. I've had great results. I'm not making any money. I want to sell it to the biggest companies in the world where they have a real need, where they'll pay me more money to do what I do. And they said, well, who do you know? And I said, what do you mean, who do I know? He said, who do you know in the speaking business that's established, someone with credibility, someone with a big name? And I said, I don't know anyone. And they said, well, then you're relegated to the linear path of cold calling and passing out business cards at Chamber of Commerce meetings, at Rotaries and Kiwanis clubs and Lions. I'm not putting any of that down. That's a lot of work. You don't want to go that path. That's the way everyone in the linear world, the non-millionaire thinking world, tries to build a business. So I said, well, I don't know anyone. And the millionaire said, I'll never forget, he said, well, you ought to find someone. You ought to find someone that's established, well established. And so he said, then what you do is you leverage their credibility, their content if necessary, their contacts. You pay them whatever they ask you. It doesn't matter if you have to sell your house. You need leverage, or you're going to be in the linear world of trying to build a business. It's going to take you 10 years to get it off the ground. And I thought, I never would have really thought about that. So long story short, I start thinking that way, like a millionaire, because I was told to do that by a millionaire. And so I started going to speakers meetings and started asking people, who's really established? I couldn't get really anywhere for about 6 months. And finally someone said, hey, have you met this guy named Bill Gove? And I said, I don't know who that is. They said, well, he's 85 years old. He's standing right over there. And it was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And they said, he's the father of professional speaking. He has this program called the Bill Gove Speech Workshop. He's taught every major speaker you can think of. He is the king of kings in this business. Now he's retired. He's been out of it for 20 years, but he is the biggest we've ever had in Florida. He is the father of the industry and a great guy. You ought to meet him sometime. I played golf with him one time. I had lunch with him one time, the guy said. And I said, well, that's great. I'm not sure what that means, but he said, you ought to meet him. So I did. And then I met him and I went back to my millionaire friend and I said, okay, I've bagged the elephant. I met him at least. Now what do I do? And the guy said, you need to learn from him. You need to go into business with him. You need to mow his lawn. You need to wash his car. You need to walk his dog if you have to learn what he knows, and then to meet the people, the contacts that he knows, and to learn the game from the biggest in the business. You need to leverage his contacts, his credibility, his information, his education, his experience, everything. If he's the father of the industry, as they say, you just became a multimillionaire speaker far before it ever happened. And I remember going to bed that night thinking, he's right. That's it. And without going into a long story about that, that's what I did. And just a few years later, I was one of the highest grossing non-celebrity speakers in the country. And then eventually, a couple years later, in the world. And people said, how did you do it? He must be a marketing genius. He must be this. He must be that. None of that was true. I just leveraged the contacts, credibility, experience, wisdom, content, everything you can think of someone that was at the top of the game. I literally climbed to the top on his shoulders. And people said, well, that can't be it. That couldn't be it. Yeah, that was it. Leverage. It is the most powerful thing. So that's just like a little business story, right? That changed my life. It's big to me, just little in the context of business, just a small business, but it changed my life, my life in every single way. Okay? Who do you know that can catapult you? Okay, if you wanna marry Jennifer Aniston or some movie star, and you think, well, what chance do I have? Who do you know that might know someone that could get you a date, or someone who's connected in some way? I know you're probably laughing right now. It happens all the time. If you don't think that happens, you're not living in this millionaire mindset world. A lot of it is not about money. It's about getting what you want through alternative methods that do not usually include linear strategy. This linear strategy we were all taught in school, you guys, they were well-meaning, but they didn't really know what they were doing most of the time. And there's examples of that I can go into, and I won't for this video because it's getting too long to begin with. But I want you to think about what you want, whatever it is, whether it's money, okay, or it's a person, or it's a place, or it's a thing, it's an asset, whatever it is. Think about what you want, and then think about how you would do it traditionally in the linear world, and then think, how would a millionaire think? How would a millionaire strategize how to get what I want 10 times as fast? Do you think like a millionaire? Because when you do, everything changes. Leverage is one of the great tools. There are a lot more in this book. I hope you'll read this book. Get it on Amazon and read it because it'll save you. This is a form of leverage. I spent my whole life running around the world like a maniac, interviewing wealthy people, and you get it all for whatever this book costs. I don't even know what it costs, $15, whatever it costs on Amazon now. I don't even know anymore. But you're leveraging my entire adult life interviews. That's a form of leverage. Read the strategies in this book and watch what happens. And remember, it's not just about money. It's about getting what you want out of life. Go for it.